It is the beginning of the Third Age, in the year of 2259. The ancient nemesis to the very concepts of light and order, the Shadows had returned. Where subtle influence and whispers of power to the younger galactic races failed to further their agenda, their black ships reminiscent of angels of death could be found annihilating all they set upon. The Vorlons, the ancient enemies of the Shadows, seemed to not want to take direct action for their own inscrutable reasons, and the majority of the younger races of the galaxy seemed generally, and blissfully, unaware of the darkness that was growing in power. But one group saw what was happening. They had been watching for the signs and portents of the Shadows' return for over 1,000 years. The Onlashok, better known to the galaxy as the Rangers. The only problem that in the 1,000 years since the last Shadow War, the Rangers had become a husk of their former selves. The once proud bulwark for the Minbari Federation against the Shadows had become a group of old men watching for the return of their enemy, with many, including the Grey Council, the leaders of the Minbari people, questioning if there was a reason for the Rangers to continue existing. Even when evidence was brought forth through the Grey Council of the Shadows' return and their manipulation of the various races of the galaxy into conflict, they still refused to reinstate and rearm the Onlashok against the coming threat. But not all members of the council favored this decision. Minbari society is made up of 3 castes: the warrior, the religious, and the worker, with the Grey Council divided into 3 equal parts to represent each group. While the religious caste believed in the prophecies of the Shadow's return and the need for the Onlashok, the warrior caste was far more vocal in their skepticism, which manifested in their votes against reactivation. 2 members of the worker caste also voted no alongside the warriors, resulting in the Grey Council choosing to not restore the Rangers back to their former glory. So without an official mandate from the Grey Council, the Onlashok and the religious caste began working in secret to prepare for the looming threat. As a part of this clandestine effort, a new breed of ship would be needed to challenge the Shadows and their terrifying fleet. One that was separate from the Minbari Federation, but could be fast, powerful, and versatile enough to handle the many operational requirements the Rangers would need in the field. This ship was the White Star, an appropriate name for a vessel designed to combat a race of beings called the Shadows. The White Star was not a big ship by any means, measuring at only 475.6 meters in length and a crew size of 50. For comparison, a Minbari Charlin war cruiser is measured at 1,600 meters with a crew of 190, and an Earth Force Hyperion heavy cruiser comes in at 1,025.39 meters and a crew of 350. An important quality that the White Star possessed was that it blended Minbari and Vorlon technology into its design, and so was afforded many advanced capabilities that could not be matched by the equivalent or larger warships of the younger races. As while the Vorlons did not seem to want to engage the Shadows directly, they generally seemed willing to aid those who wished to do so, which in this case came in the form of loaning their more advanced technology to the White Star's development. Starting with the technology in the White Star's propulsion, it was powered by Stalasha gravimetric engines, which meant it had unparalleled speed compared to that of similar-sized ships. As well as it was a Minbari design, it could provide artificial gravity via magnetic and gravitational principles due to the drive system, and not need rotating sections to produce the same effect as seen aboard Earth Force ships like the Omega destroyers. However, the White Star was a warship, and had an impressive array of weaponry to carry out its missions for the Onlashok in a ship its size. Its primary weapon was a single neutron cannon located in the front underside of the ship, and was complemented by 3 sets of twin fusion cannons. As for the White Star's defenses, they were based on Vorlon organic technology, making the ship highly durable as they could adapt to each combat encounter it faced through direct experience. This organic defense worked by taking the majority of harmful energy hitting the White Star's skin and reflecting it away, resulting in only the physical impact of the blast. It was also noted that there was an auto repair system integrated into the ship as well. And perhaps the peak of this advanced technology was the White Star's ability for faster-than-light travel by creating jump points to enter hyperspace. This was important for 2 reasons. One, no other ship similar to the White Star's size had this capability. And second, as many space vessels were reliant on jump gates, This could open up a new world of strategic options for the White Star. One of the absolute sterling, yet unorthodox uses of this technology was during the Battle of Zagros 7 in 2260. Zagros 7 was a planet under mine turret blockade by the Centauri Republic, which was being subtly influenced by shadow agents. This blockade was in place because the Onlashok had a training facility on the planet's surface. However, one ranger managed to escape Zagros, a man named Marcus Cole, who made his way to Babylon 5 to inform Ranger co-leaders Captain Sheridan and Minbari Ambassador Delenn about the situation. Together they would take the newly unveiled White Star 1 into the system, to clear the blockade and allow the Rangers to escape before the Shadows could wipe them out directly. But as the White Star progressed in its destruction of the Centauri mines, a shadow vessel uncloaked and began to engage the White Star. Unwilling to leave the Rangers on Zagros trapped, Sheridan ordered the ship to continue clearing the mines, all the while dodging fire from the shadow vessel. Eventually the mines were destroyed and the Rangers able to slip out of the system aboard their own ships. But the shadow vessel never relented in its pursuit of the White Star, and while the small warship was powerful, it was not able to stand toe-to-toe with the ancient enemy. Escaping into hyperspace through the nearby jump gate was the only option, as Sheridan refused to use the jump point generator aboard the White Star to avoid showing their full capabilities too early. But the Shadow pursued them still. With their options of survival, much less escape, dwindling, Sheridan embarked on what could only be described as a bold gambit. They would take the White Star to an abandoned system with a jump gate, which they did. And when the White Star emerged into the system, and as the gate was still active with its jump portal open, the shadow vessel emerged, which was when Sheridan ordered the jump point generator aboard the White Star to be activated while still inside the active gate, which caused the two competing energies to erupt in a cataclysmic explosion that their ship barely escaped from. The shadow vessel, on the other hand, was not so lucky. In one engagement, Sheridan and the White Star had given the Rangers their first solid victory against their unfathomable enemy, and had proven the capability of the White Star in multiple fields in the process, starting with the clearing of the Centauri minefield while dodging the beam fire from the shadow vessel, followed by outrunning said vessel, and ending with Sheridan's creative use of the White Star's jump point generator. But mines are not a challenge for most warships, so what of a more clear and obvious example of the White Star's offensive power? This could be seen during the infamous March to Earth, when Captain Sheridan rallied the entire White Star fleet of 100 to 150 ships to go on the offensive against Earth to remove President Clark from office and free the Earth Alliance from his despotic rule. From the Battle of Proxima 3, the one-sided skirmish at Beta 9, the showdown at Sector 300 against the Shadow Tech-enhanced Omega destroyers, and ending with the liberation of Mars and Earth, the White Stars were always there, often fighting against the much larger and heavier armored Omega-class destroyers, which were Earth Force's best warships at the time. The White Stars, acting as both individual ships and in squadrons, challenged them, overpowered them, and even when Clark brought out his ace in the hole that was Shadow-enhanced Omega destroyers against the White Stars, they still managed to prevail. After the titanic conflicts of the Shadow War and the Earth Alliance Civil War, the White Stars, along with the Rangers, would be repurposed as a galactic peacekeeping force for the newly christened Interstellar Alliance. A notable example of the White Stars serving in this role would be the liberation of the Enphili homeworld in 2261. As the Enphili people were under siege from a raider group acting under the clandestine direction of the Drazi Freehold. The Interstellar Alliance were then informed of these raider attacks, resulting in President Sheridan sending every available White Star to the Enphili as a show of the Alliance's power. During the subsequent battle, the White Stars simply annihilated the marauding ships, their presumably defiant yet ramshackle fleet being no match for the fusion of Minbari and Vorlon technologies. But the mission was not finished yet, for after the carnage, the White Stars took up defensive positions around the planet, as they had received word of an incoming Drazi fleet sent to ambush them and exterminate the Enphili. But by this point, the Drazi's involvement in the Enphili's plight had been exposed, along with their plans to betray the White Stars. When the Drazi government was informed by the Alliance as to the new situation, they suddenly became unwilling to provoke the wrath of a fully prepared White Star fleet, and the Drazi were intimidated into leaving the Enphili to their affairs. The White Star is many things to the peoples of the galaxy. To some, it embodies style, others power, to the enemies of the Onlashok, fear, and to one lone maintenance worker aboard Babylon 5, a plucked chicken. But besides these descriptors, if we wish to get romantic in our description of the White Star, as we usually do at the end of these videos, then the White Star could be considered a shining light in the galaxy, which ties rather nicely into their name, as what does light do? It casts out the shadows with its brilliance, and becomes a beacon to all under its gaze. The White Star. A very fitting name indeed.